Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome back to this next video. And this is another video in the series of videos on immunology. And in this particular video, we are going to discuss about the B cells, which is an important arm of the adaptive immune system. If I give you an overview of what we have discussed so far, is that I've told you that in the bone marrow, you have got the hematopoietic stem cells, and these hematopoietic stem cells give rise to two progenitor cells. One that is known as the common myeloid erythroid progenitor cell, and these common myeloid erythroid progenitor cell, they give rise to the red blood cells. Of course, we do not usually talk about the red blood cells when we study a course on the immunology. The CMP that also give rise to the blood platelets. It also gave rise to the neutrophils, basophils, and the eosinophils. It gave rise to the monocytes, and it also gave rise to the mast cells. We have already seen this stuff. Secondly, the hematopoietic stem cell, it gave rise to the common lymphoid progenitor, and these common lymphoid progenitor cells, they give rise to the B cells, the T cells, and the natural killer cells. And these are usually the component of the adaptive immune system, these B cells, the T cells, and the natural killer cells. Before going into the B cells, let me give you a difference between the innate and the adaptive immunity, which are actually the two pillars of the immune system. So you get a revision of what we discussed in the innate immunity, and that is going to give you a comparison between the innate and the adaptive immunity. So when you generally talk about the immune system, so immunity is actually the body's ability to resist infections and diseases, and the body's ability to resist these infections and diseases is because of the innate and the adaptive immune system. So, when you talk about the importance of the immune system, that is going to protect our body from the pathogens, and that is going to maintain homeostasis in our body. Looking at the innate immunity, this is the first line of defense, providing immediate but non-specific responses. So what I mean by this is that you are going to see the innate immunity in all immune responses. If you talk about the components of the innate immunity, you have got physical barriers like the skin and the mucous membrane. When you talk about the cellular components, so there are cells like the macrophages, neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils, and we had a detailed discussion on this particular stuff. So I would suggest you should go back and see those particular videos where we discuss these particular components if you forgot about this stuff. When you talk about the molecular components of the innate immunity, there are cytokines, there are complement proteins. We had detailed discussion on them as well. If you look at the mechanisms which the innate immunity follow in our body, it can go for the phagocytosis. So you are talking about the macrophages, for example, over here. You can go for the inflammation that would be carried out by these cytokines, for example. And you can go for the complement system, which is actually a set of the proteins that is going to enhance the phagocytosis and the inflammation. So this is journal about the innate immunity. If you compare that with the adaptive immunity, so that is characterized by its ability to recognize specific antigens. So in the innate, you are going for non-specific response. In adaptive immunity, you are going for a specific response. If you look at the components of the adaptive immunity, the first one, you have got the lymphocytes. And when we talk about the lymphocytes, we usually talk about two types of the cells. One, they are known as the B cells, which are responsible for producing antibodies. And these antibodies are actually proteins that bind to specific antigen, neutralizing these pathogens or marking them for destruction by the other immune cells like the T cells. The second type of the lymphocyte that we see in the adaptive immune system, these are the T cells, and you can have the helper T cells, which are actually responsible for assisting the activation of the B cells and other immune cells. And we have got the cytotoxic T cells, like the CD8 plus T cells, which are responsible for directly killing the infected or the cancerous cells. Don't worry about them. We are going to have detailed discussions on all of these, about the B cells, about the T cells, about the helper T cells, and about the cytotoxic T cell. This is just an overview of the components of the adaptive immune system. Then you have got the memory cells, and these memory cells, they are very important. These memory cells are long-lived B and T cells that remember previous encounter with specific antigens, allowing for a faster and more effective response upon re-exposures. So producing specific B cells, producing specific T cells, that is a very time consuming process. So what the immune system do, it is going to keep a memory in the form of the memory B cells and the T cells, thereby allowing for a faster and more effective response upon re-exposure of a particular antigen. Then you have got the antigen presenting cells like the dendritic cells and the macrophages, which are responsible for capturing and presenting the antigen to the T cells. And the last one, these are not, of course, cells, these are the components, and these are the cytokines, which are actually the signaling molecules produced by the immune cells that is going to help regulate and coordinate the immune response, including the activation and differentiation of the lymphocytes. So, this is just an overview of the component of the adaptive immune system. So, let us talk about these components in detail. And we are going to start our discussion with the B cells. Now, these B cells, if you talk about them, so the first thing you need to understand is about their development, from where these B cells come. When you talk about these B cells in the bone marrow, this is the bone marrow, for example, you have got specialized microenvironments which are called niches. And these niches contain the red marrow. There are two types of the marrow that you are going to see in the bone. One is known as the red marrow, the other one is known as the yellow marrow. When you talk about the immune system, they are actually these red marrow which give rise to the different types of the blood cells. So, in the microenvironment, like in these niches, you are going to see the hematopoietic stem cells, and I just already just gave you an idea how the hematopoietic stem cells work. That is going to give rise to the erythroid, myeloid progenitor cells, and that is going to give rise to the lymphoid progenitor cells. So these micro environment or these niches, they are very important in regulating the behavior of the hematopoietic stem cells and the other cells within the marrow. So, if you talk about the pathway, how this starts, how the hematopoietic stem cells, they are going to give rise to the different kinds of the blood cells, including the B cells. So, there is a particular signaling pathway which is known as the Notch1 signaling pathway in the bone marrow, and this particular signaling pathway that is very important in regulating the hematopoiesis. This hematopoiesis is actually the formation of the blood cells and maintaining of the hematopoietic stem cells. Of course, we are not going to go into the detail of the Notch1 signaling pathway in this particular video because this is not the scope of this particular video. So this is how generally the things they are happening in the bone marrow. You have got these microenvironment, these niches. These niches have got the hematopoietic stem cells, and these hematopoietic stem cells, using the Notch1 signaling pathway, is going to go for the regulation of the hematopoiesis and the maintenance of the hematopoietic stem cells. Now, these hematopoietic stem cells, as I've told you, they are going to give rise to the common lymphoid progenitors, and these common lymphoid progenitor are going to give rise to the B cells. Now, when you talk about the development of the B cells, these B cells are not directly produced as the mature B cells. They go through a long path of the maturation process, and at the end of the maturation process, you are going to get the mature B cells, and those particular mature B cells is going to give you the antibodies. So when you talk about these common lymphoid progenitor cells, they are going to give you the progenitors, or the you can say the cells which are going to get mature into the B cells for the production of the antibodies. So when you talk about the bone marrow, in the bone marrow, the B cells is going to exist in three forms, or in, you can say, in three developmental stages. The first one, that is known as the pro B cell. The other one, that is known as the pre B cell. So from the pro B cells, you are going to get the pre B cells, and the pre B cells, they are going to get mature into the immature B cells. So this is how the things that are happening. So in the bone marrow, you are going to go through these three steps. So when you talk about these pro B cells or the pre B cells or the immature B cells, say for example, if you are interested in studying only the pro B cells, so what particular mechanisms or what particular markers are you going to use to get the pro B cells and not the pre B cells or the immature B cells? So to get a differentiation between the pro B cells, the pre B cells, the immature B cells, or any other type of the developmental stage of the B cells, you are going to use certain markers. If you look at the pro B cell, they are going to produce these specific markers like the CD22, the CD34, which is actually an adhesion molecule, the CD38, and the IL7R. The CD34 is an adhesion molecules, the other the CD22, the CD38. This one, they are actually the receptors present on these pro B cells. When you talk about the pre B cells, just like the pro B cell, they are going to have the CD34 adhesion molecules. They are going to have CD38. You are going to have CD79A, and you can see over here you are not going to see any CD79A on the pro B cells. So you are going through a developmental stage. You have got the CD79B. Again, this is not present on the pro B cells. And you have got a specific protease present in the pre B cell, which is known as the MME. And thirdly, when you talk about these immature B cells, they have got like a different set of the surface markers, like the CD5 and the CD38, the CD53, which is again a binding protein, the MME, just like the pre-B cell, this is a protease. I've got the CD45, B220, and actually collection of the CD45 and the B220, this is known as the PTPRC. So CD45 plus B220 would be the PTPRC. So this particular stage of the development of the B cells, that is going to happen in the bone marrow. We will continue the discussion in the next video, and we'll talk about the other developmental stages of the B cells.